Happy Rom-Com Month, everybody. We are doing 28 Days of Love. Today is day 15. I'm your host, Melissa Forziat. I'm a keynote speaker. And when I speak, my topic is Take the Donut. It's another way to say carpe diem. And it comes from this weird thing that happened in college where I left an actual donut on a table and it became an object lesson for me and what it looks like to leave an opportunity behind. So now I want to take the donut. And sometimes I'll even give myself a challenge. If there's something I really want to do, I'll make it official. I'll do some videos about it, and it's a way to hold myself accountable. But this time I'm opening up the challenge to anybody who wants to join. So here we are doing 28 days of love, 28 days of rom-coms. Again, today's day 15. We're watching Benny and Joon. I'm going to talk about 10 things I love about Benny and Joon, but I'm not doing this alone. No, back again. We have Anjl Rodee from BrushCapades, who you may remember from covering 500 Days of Summer and Sleepless in Seattle. Angel's back one more time to talk about Benny and Joon. Welcome back, Anjl.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So glad to have you here. Okay, so first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself for those who are coming to this video first. And what's your background with this film?
Well, a background about me first. I am an artist, a musician, a comedian who thinks that everybody should be an artist, a musician, and a comedian. And I teach corporate and private classes to help people along that way, along with that journey. And gosh, did anybody not come to this film with their love for Johnny Depp? That was me anyway. That was my path. 1993, definitely. Also, as somebody who spent a lot of time in the Pacific Northwest, this was filmed in Spokane, and so love that as well. These Seattle
Interesting.
younger
Yeah.
step sibling.
Something
Battle.
like that. Yeah. And plus, as an artist and,
Absolutely.
this is like the perfect film for you to cover.
Yes.
Um, and so many levels, so many people are artists in this movie, or at least a couple main characters are in different ways. So, yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this one. I have to say, this was one of the movies on the list that I have not seen in I mean, at least decades. I don't know, like,
I agree. Same.
I'm sure I didn't see it in 1993 when it came out, but I imagine I saw it in the 90s, and I don't know that I've seen it since. There were images from the movie that were like burned in my brain, and I thought, well, this would be interesting to go back. And I had a feeling it was a movie that it would be right for this list that I was curating for Rom-Com Month, but it was a little bit of a roll of the dice because I didn't know if it would hold up. I didn't know what the movie really was. And what you think you saw when you were younger and what you see now as an adult, probably two different things. So I am delighted with what I found on this rewatch. Absolutely so happy this is on the list. So before I talk about how we'll cover this is Benny and Joon from 1993 is when it came out. It was directed by Jeremiah Chechik. It was written by Barry Berman, Leslie McNeil. It stars Johnny Depp as Sam, Mary Stuart Masterson as Joon, Aidan Quinn as Benny, Julianne Moore as Ruthie, Oliver Platt as Eric. I mean, it's a long list of amazing, like it's a who's who.
Hmm.
Um, and I just wanted to make the note, like, I mean, rom-coms in general, like there's been sort of an ebb and flow of hot heydays for rom-coms. And I think like the early 2000s was a prime decade for it. We got some in the mid, 2010s a little bit, but lately, especially as like bigger and bigger budget films have taken over theaters, you just I just don't know how a movie like this would get made now, if at all. Probably
Yeah.
not. And the log line of this is like Buster Keaton, like mental illness. Like it's not a film that I think you'd get made today, and it wouldn't be marketed in this way. It might go to limited series on a streaming platform or something like that. But this is just so specific and very the movie isn't of its time, but the fact that it was released in the format it is, I think, was of its time.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make that note with this up front. And the way we're going to cover this, we're doing a top 10 list of our favorite things. I'm going to do the even numbers. Anjl will do the odd numbers. And I'll start with Number 10 on this. This is a broader note. Most of my points that I'll make are going to be specific scenes, but this is just very broadly. Benny and June is this story of acceptance and trust. Like, can you be who you really are? No matter what that is, what that looks like, and there's probably somebody out there for you, maybe many people, maybe a whole community, but this idea that like you'll find your people, if and it's okay to be who you actually are, no matter what that looks like. And I like that we kind of see every character doing that. And
Yeah.
in many ways, like they're being celebrated for the things that make them unique. So that for me is just the overriding message of this film. I feel like you could probably take away different overriding messages from this film depending on who you are.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And I agree with what you're saying that I don't know if this movie would be made today unless maybe the Duplass brothers were attached, a name like that to the production of the thing, and even then be considered a super low budge thing, not the major release that this was at the time. I think most romance movies these days are just relegated to the Hallmark made in Canada things. Totally fine and awesome. It's a great genre, but it's not the mainstream thing that it used to be. Um, yeah, totally agree with all of that. It was definitely of its time, and I wonder if it was a vehicle for the young and super popular Johnny Depp at the time, and is that what it was? Maybe. Um, yeah, but it definitely I don't think it would or could be made today. And yeah.
Yeah, and your point about it being like sort of like the vehicle for Johnny Depp. It's interesting because I think he sort of came onto the scene in A Nightmare on Elm Street, from a movie standpoint.
From a movie standpoint, yeah.
And you know, horror, like it's mainstream, but it's not mainstream. It's very
Mhm.
specifically its own genre. The early Johnny Depp stuff, he took some real risks and leaps, and I think there are actors that I think of that are kind of in this category of like, oh, they do interesting stuff.
Mhm.
And so for a minute there, it was like, ooh, what's going to be the next thing? Because it's always going to be something that's like, what is this? And yeah, this is a classic, I think, in his filmography.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, that's number 10. What do you have for
Yeah.
number 9?
Number nine, mine is you touched on it a little bit, just the depth of the acting that you didn't realize, or maybe I didn't know who they were back in the 90s, but from Oliver Platt to William Macy has a bit part in this movie. It's just insane the amount of people, and another character would come on and be like, oh my God, I know that guy too. How often does that happen? So deep in the character roster of a movie like this. That was very enjoyable for a second watch for me to see people that now we know pretty well, are iconic now, and we're like, oh man, this was just a bit part. For them, this was a climb up their ladder, and I guess this movie is kind of a climb up the ladder for everybody, maybe except for Aidan Quinn. This was definitely Mary Stuart Masterson's biggest role at that point. And Johnny Depp had made a name for himself in television with 21 Jump Street. So I think he was looking, it's not always easy to go from TV to movies.
People really didn't do it then.
They really didn't do it. And I think that's why, and this also was his first foray to go from I'm just playing a heartthrob to I'm playing a character, and which I think continues to be important. Well, at the time, continued to be important for him. But I think this was the first one that really gave him a taste for that.
Hmm.
So yeah, depth of the acting was it was all just so well done. I thought for the little movie that it was.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, yeah. I mean, the whole list really like, and Mary Stuart Masterson's. I haven't seen her in a lot of things, but I feel like the stuff she was in some kind of Wonderful. Is that right?
Hmm.
I think that's the other thing that I've seen her in. But I mean, not having seen a lot of her stuff, it feels like she disappeared into this role. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I can't agree more with what you just said. For number eight, I am gonna, Sam's gonna come up a little in some of my specific scenes and best moments here. Um, so number eight, Sam asking for avocados for June in the diner. And like just the little smile she gives, because we have this whole quirky discussion about like why she doesn't like raisins. She has this real vendetta against raisins, and raisins are what she's got. And then you just see like, at the end of this whole scene, Sam picks the safer option and he asks for it for her. And I think what I love about this is that he's really listening and understanding her.
Hmm.
Like, she's not just going on a tirade about raisins. She wants something done about this. And like he's not trying to like calm her down. Don't worry, there it's fine with the raisins. He's like, I'm gonna get you a replacement because that's what a human should do for you for this situation. He just he knows what she needs. And to be honest, as you see it unfolding, it doesn't ever really seem like it's all that much that she's asking for. Like
Yeah.
it seems completely reasonable when you put yourself in her shoes. And he kind of cuts to that and he's like, this is reasonable and I'm going to predict your needs and make sure you've got what you need. And I just, it's such a small thing, and you could focus on the whole raisin writing, but like this is for me, it was just like, he's totally focused on what she needs.
Hmm.
And it was so beautiful to me.
Yeah, it might have been the first time that her character just took her needs at face value without trying to convince her because she's incapacitated in some way that what she wants is not reasonable. There just is other options, and that was Sam's first thought with her is I'm gonna find you another, and it might have been the first time she felt respect as an adult, as a human, as a person. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because we know that Benny has been caring for her, but
He
I
loves her.
feel like they've gotten into some patterns. It's going to happen. It's been a long time. They've gotten into some patterns, and I think they're not always empowering for her. And so it's, Sam's just like, let's get you something that's not raisins.
Yeah.
Like, why should you have to deal with this? Like, life's too
Yeah.
short, man. Um,
Yes.
yeah, it's so good. But yeah, I know it's specific, but that's going to be the theme for me moving forward. But that's number eight. What do
I
you have
like
for
it.
number seven?
For number seven, I have the blurred lines between virtues and flaws. Every character has is flawed in some way, as all humans are, but they do such a delightful job of your flaw in the right light is a virtue, right? In some situations, it is a virtue. For instance, Sam's dance in the park. Oh, I'm going to get to that next. We won't talk about it yet. But this like Benny's love for June, it's overpowering. It is obviously a virtue. It's also a flaw because he's keeping her from being the best her that she can be, and her quirkiness as well is can be seen as a flaw. It also makes her very open to the quirkiness that is Sam. They just fit together really well, puzzle piece wise, and in that way, I feel like all the characters, even the side characters, uh, were fairly well rounded, and their their flaws come out at the end to help the couple out or to help Benny or some way. That I really enjoyed.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think and that dovetails really well with what my number 10 was, the whole acceptance and trust thing
Yeah.
because, is it a flaw? Is it a virtue? Or is it just you? And I'm here with you. Like I
Anything
love
is what
you.
we make it, right? I mean, anything that annoys you is somebody's flaw. And, and anything that you're like, oh, I see what you did there, accept that, whatever, or I love you because of that thing. Nah, that same thing is a virtue.
You know,
It's so much about our perception of
it
everything.
reminds me in 500 Days of Summer, which we covered together, we get that sort of echo. We start with things that Tom loves about summer, and then it gets echoed later in the film. Those same exact thing, he hates them now.
Yes,
Like we see it
yes,
all replayed, he hates it.
yes,
So even in one from one person's lens, depending on where they're at in their story or how they're feeling, it can change their outlook on things. So, and we certainly see how things evolve in this movie at that.
yeah.
So, okay. Um, this scene number 6. I just like it because I like it. Benny's just double take when he sees Sam ironing the grilled cheese. Like you just get these moments where you get June and Benny just standing next to each other, just being like, what is he doing now? June's always kind of delighted about it. And Benny's always a little more skeptical, but just this double take. He sees Sam ironing the grilled cheese, but I love how in the dialogue they always have Benny coming around on it. And he's like, what setting do you use for grilled cheese? June's like cotton, definitely not rayon or silk. Like it's just like they're ready to roll with it. Benny's like, this isn't typical, and I can acknowledge that, but uh this is what's happening in my house today. Like,
This was something that was delightful to me to come back and watch it because in my 30-year-old memory of this movie, I remember Benny being a lot more anti-Sam, and he wasn't really throughout the whole. He was just like, this is different, and this is different, and it wasn't until he got freaked out about the fact that this is the antithesis of the protection I need to give to June, which ended up being a flawed thought. But that's when he freaked out and said, "Sam, you got to go, and we need to go back to the way things always have been." But you're right. He always was wondering about it, and then just being like, "Okay, yeah, this is a thing."
that's the thing, you're right. Like I think the way this character could have been written of Benny, like he could have been um more critical
Hmm.
of Sam. Like it always looked like it could head in that direction from where it started. Like, oh, and then what's that next thing? What's the
Hmm.
next thing he says? Like, yes, you're surprised, but surprised in a good way or surprised in a bad way. And every time he'd see Sam doing a thing, it was like, oh. And then the next thought was something like, well, okay,
Yeah,
it was sort of that. So
yeah,
I think I could have very easily found that character unlikable,
yeah.
but they didn't take me there. There was a moment, but I think actually we might touch upon it in one of your numbers, where I was sort of less on board, but it's that even that turns around for me.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep.
Hmm. But
All
okay,
right.
so that was number 6. What do you
All
have for
right.
number 5?
Number 6 is the park scene I alluded to. Otherwise, up until now, Benny's whole take on Sam is, "You're weird. Okay. This is weird. Okay." Then in the park scene, and he sees everybody else's reaction to Sam's quirkiness and his physicalities and stuff. And he really is bringing delight and joy to the masses. And Benny's eyes just light up. And he's like, "Oh, this is your place in the world." That's how I took that scene. And that was very joyful for me, to see Benny go, oh my gosh, just that light bulb that went off, and to me, everything in the world has that capacity if we let it be that. So it was very impactful to me to watch that happen to Benny in that scene. Yeah, that was my favorite part of that scene. The physicality and everything Johnny Depp had to do to learn that stuff was just freaking amazing because that physical, not only be that physical, but to be that physical and funny um, is not easy. And
I
every
wonder how many takes it took to do some of these things. I mean, that and like the diner scene, with
yeah.
the maybe not so much with the emulating Charlie Chaplin, um, but like the plates and like he does all of these like tricks,
Mhm.
and sometimes it looks like they had a little help from some rigging with certain
Mm.
things like the hat.
Hat
um
pulling away.
yeah, or even like actually that same thing with June has a trick that she does at one point where she's got a candle on the floor, she's got a tissue in front of a fan, she lets go of the tissue and it perfectly lands on the candle and lights on fire. It's like, well, that doesn't just happen. But
There may have been a few takes.
there, or because we watch it all the way, it could have been that there was like something pulling it. Like, I don't know. But
Yeah.
some of the stuff that Johnny Depp is doing is just like he clearly is doing it.
Yeah.
And very complicated things to like parlor tricks to learn
Yeah.
for a movie role. Um yeah, I some of that stuff is so burned in my brain. Um Yeah, what a great scene. I will say with Benny, that's one place because he sees Sam doing something that's making like at first he's like, come on, let's go, let's go, let's go. And then he's like, oh wait. Like, let's not. Like, this is amazing. And he's just like he just like falls in love with this talent that Sam has. But then you can almost see the dollar signs
Mm.
in his brain. Like, it might not be in that scene, but right after he's like, could we monetize it? Like, like this could be like something you make money from, Sam. Um, and that starts to head in a direction where if this were another film with another story, that's like goes down a different route and one that might not be good for Sam. Um, but again, that's not where this movie goes, and they pull it back from there. So yeah, but that park scene is so memorable.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah. Okay, well, okay, so that was number five. I'm gonna go with number four. And for me, I think this scene sort of encapsulates the entire Benny and Sam and June relationship. Sam serenading. Okay, so uh, they almost kiss. It's real close to almost kissing.
Exploring the space.
And then there's all this tension and he backs off because it's like, this is too much for me. And he pulls out a balloon and he inflates it and serenades her with the squeal as the air comes out. And June, this the reaction of Mary Stuart Masterson. June's like, I am am I disappointed or am I absolutely fascinated by this choice? Like you can see her like she wanted this to be a kiss moment, but this is interesting too. Like, it's so great and so delightfully unexpected for us and everybody involved. And like Sam doesn't know what to do. He's just trying to get out of this situation. And she's like, like just to see her just fascinated and exhilarated by this really interesting choice in the middle of a romantic moment. Um, it's the whole movie for me.
It's so good. And that dovetails really well into my number three, which is the nonverbal communication by both of those characters. And I feel like his nonverbal communication in that moment didn't allow is the wrong word, send her into a panic situation like what happened on the bus. That was outside of, not that anything else was going on verbally, but a lot was definitely going on mentally for her that sent her off a deep end. And a situation like this could be something that somebody who is not comfortable in social situations or has never been in this situation before, and that's what usually sets her off, being in a situation she's not been in before, could have put her in a bad mental place. But his nonverbal way to handle that thing real just took her out of her mind and gave her a little more control in the situation by him taking some of it. I don't know. I thought that's what I loved about that scene as well. I I love that he doesn't just have normal conversations. He does have normal conversations with people, but he also, I love the scene where Ruthie is the love interest of Benny, right? Julianne Moore. And when he first meets her, he recognizes her from her horror film debut. And instead of saying, "Oh, you were in this movie, I loved it," he just immediately started acting it out. What a lovely tribute. What a lovely way, creative way to not say, "Oh, you were in that movie that I loved so much," to just start being that. So good. And June's nonverbal communication is her sharing her art and art process with Sam. I thought was those were really beautiful scenes as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because so much of this movie, it's like there's mystique and mystery around these characters for us because we don't always understand exactly what's happening in their heads. But the choices that they're making are so interesting to watch that you almost don't miss it. And they seem to know exactly what the other one is trying to say. I mean, I think I even love in the point you just made, with Sam being such a fan of Ruthie's work, because Ruthie, I think over the years has been sort of like not comfortable with that side of her life and
Yeah.
with people knowing about it, or maybe she hasn't had everybody be a fan. And so she is much more reluctant. But Sam is so effusive in his love for this work. Like at the point where they're watching the movie together and he literally cannot stop himself from like lip syncing like he has to say the whole thing. Um, and she doesn't really at first know whether to be horrified or not, but when she sees he can't stop himself because he loves it so much, it totally changes her demeanor. It makes her sort of re-own the thing that she did years earlier. So yeah, just all the characters. There's just like this beautiful, like you said, this nonverbal um, way of showing love for each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. Okay, this is gonna bring me to number two. Um, I just get chills when we see Sam at the end, like that first time we see from the inside Sam swinging past the window in the mental hospital and the music swelling at that very moment. The music cue right on point.
So good.
And just the image of it, because we know he's been trying to get up there. We've been seeing it happen from outside. And then, June's inside having this really serious conversation, and then she just I cannot forget that scene. Like, not this, the image of him swinging past was also burned in my brain. And I know why, because it's so powerful the way this was edited together. Um, and it starts really slow, like not real time of how quickly he'd be swinging. Um, and sort of the double read for the people in the room, like, is she just excited about getting her own apartment? Like, I don't know, she's just like, what's it's so beautifully done, and I think a lot of credit goes to editing here
Yeah.
for making this, taking all the pieces and making it so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. It was such a lovely little way for them to show that she has not scared Sam away because that's what she feared she did. She scared him away when he saw the worst of her. And it was such a great little nope, whatever that superhero that is Sam would look like. There he was, swinging in and back out of the picture, and then back in, and then back out.
You didn't
And
even get all the way through.
good. So well done. Yeah.
They don't show you the part where they like try to get him to safety. Like, well, I guess he just falls down, doesn't he?
He
He
fell.
just
He
like,
fell off the hook. Yeah, which is the only way that could go
like
because
how else? Like,
yeah.
um, yeah. Oh my goodness. I I appreciate your point that like he's seen what happened on the bus,
Mhm,
and here he is still.
mhm,
Um, I
mhm.
think, you know, and I wonder up until that point in the movie, because Sam has asked the question, like, what it like, walk me through what happens for her, because he
Mhm.
hasn't really seen it.
Right.
Like, she's in such a controlled environment
Exactly.
in that house, and he has heard that he needs to be careful, but he doesn't know how or why or what the
Yeah.
repercussions could be. So in some ways, what happens on the bus is really scary for both of them, and in other ways it's like, okay, like this is what happens. Like
Mhm.
he's got now a sense of like, okay, this is, you have to have that at some point, like I think these things can't be unspoken in
Yes.
relationships, and it's important to know what triggers a person and what to do, and like she might not be able to articulate that, but he's seen it,
Yes.
an example of it, and
Yeah.
moving forward, because he wants to move forward and she wants to move forward, they can they can be better prepared.
Yeah.
um and yeah, I think it was a really valuable moment for them.
Yeah, yeah. It brings me to my number one, which is when Benny said to Sam, "You need to go. You need to leave her alone so that she stays safe." And Sam says, "No, no, I'm not gonna do that." I love that because that also is outside of his character, I think, because he's such a laid back, kind, docile human that for him to be like, nope, this is where we are now, and his character did such a great job in that moment of strife of figuring out what to do, and help showed up, and he was calm through the whole thing, and I think that maybe Benny needed to see that moment happen even though he didn't register that's what was happening in the moment. He just saw my sister's in danger. You're here with her. You're bad. You got to go. Um, I don't know that this movie did a fantastic job of showing Benny's turnaround of why he went from nope, I got to keep her in her controlled environment to we're going to give this a go. And maybe it was just the fear of her being in a place where she's in a hospital and she doesn't want to see him and she doesn't want any contact with the outside world, and if that was enough of the fear. If so, I don't know that they dialogue wise gave that enough gravitas, but I that was one of my favorite moments just because, man, that's what you want anybody to do for you, to say you should go, and then for them to be like, no, no, not going.
Hmm.
I, yeah, I thought that was really great.
Beautifully said, and I agree. I think they did sort of move pretty quickly through the part of like what made Benny have this turnaround. um but I do think that June, uh I don't know that it was a major point of like refusing to see him as much as like being like keeping to herself.
Mhm.
And I think that was scary for him because he had a real, uh I don't know, dependence on the dynamic they had in his own life. Like, what was his life without her in it? And if she's like isolating herself this much, that shifts Benny's world in a way that he wasn't prepared for. So I guess you can sort of extrapolate from it, but they didn't spell it out for us for sure. Um, and yeah, Sam Sam's got strength. I mean, he's had strength the whole way through. He does things boldly that he's quiet about it, but then he speaks volumes through his actions, mostly through performance.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's through like a moral choice. Like, nope, this is where the line is. Like, I not happening, man.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate your viewpoint and I disagree. Um and then he's reliable and dependable once again when they need to get to June.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's he ends up being a good sort of like partner in crime of like breaking into and trespassing, and his skills become useful. Uh, I mean, yeah, it's so lovely, this
Yeah.
movie. I
Yeah.
do wonder, I mean, the conversation about mental health has become a thing where I don't know how much it actually was in 1993, which is why it's especially interesting to me that this movie got made even then, because I don't know how you market a thing that people don't talk about very much. So, like, how well does this movie handle how it talks about those things with June, or even maybe about Sam? Like, I don't know, and you could probably lodge some criticism against this movie for that, but I think it does a reasonable job in how it handled the subject for the time. I think it depicted all of these characters with love.
Mhm.
Um, and with the if the point of the movie was them accepting each other, for me, then that means that like, our contract with this movie is we need to accept them too.
Yeah.
So I think even if our conversation about mental health and mental illness has evolved, they were doing the best they can, and I think they did a good job,
Yeah. I don't even
overall.
think I had heard of the word autism in the 90s. I don't think that was a thing. And I don't know if either character is autistic, but you're right. And a lot of the criticisms that I have reread since then from the time, from the 90s, were saying that they didn't like that this movie took the idea of mental illness and made it seem magical and whimsical. And they panned it for that. I'm like, oh, it's kind of sad because it's all you've got. I mean, all you've got is your opinion about a thing, and to make it decide that it is a negative. I don't know, that was just really sad to me. Why can't it be magical and whimsical if emotion wise that's where you are?
Yeah, I mean, this movie absolutely does make them, like, it's so magical is the perfect word for it. Um, and I can understand why in the 90s they would have been saying, why are you sort of like glamorizing this?
Mhm.
But why can't these two people find love?
Right.
And why can't they? I mean, in any relationship, hopefully at the start of your relationship, you're like finding out cool things about each other and you're excited to see each other and you're fascinated by each other.
Magical time.
Why can't that happen for these two people?
Yeah.
So I think, if we sort of take away like the labels of it, because the movie tries not to label them,
Right. They never are.
you know, like, they're just Sam and June, and they're finding these really authentic ways to them to connect with each other, and they're like exactly the right fit.
Mm-hmm.
um and there's magic in that for anybody, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that is kind of Sam's thing. I mean, he finds the world a magical and whimsical place, and he makes the world magical and whimsical. End of story.
Even the way they introduce him, I think, so it wasn't on my list, but it was on my honorable mentions, like the even just the first time we see him, because, you know if you're looking at you're framing this through, like, is this a mental illness story, but then you look at Sam for the first time and he's like was he on a train, and he's reading a book about Buster Keaton, and you
Yeah.
see his hat, and then he just sort of like pulls down the book a little bit. It's like, this is not your typical introduction to a character.
Right.
um this
Even
is
the
interesting.
train had an appearance of magic and whimsy because it wasn't your your basic Amtrak. You know, town. I'm guessing in Sam's view, that's how he views a train. And that's how we saw the train watching
Yeah.
Sam in town.
Oh, that's such a cool way to look at that. I like that very much. Oh my goodness. Well, look, that's 10 things we love about this movie, but I bet you can find some more. Okay, folks. So, everybody who's watching this, feel free to jump into the comments with things you love about this movie. Could be things we said, could be things we didn't. Uh, but there's a lot to appreciate, I think, about this film. So, we'd love to hear from you about that. And before we close this out, Angel, what do you have coming up here? Anything you want to plug?
Well, yeah. Check out my company, BrushCapades. Go to that website. Tuesday nights, I have public classes. So if you want to come and draw something or paint something with me, I do it every Tuesday night. So go to my website, brushcapades.com. Check that out. Come paint with me.
Sounds like a great plan. Perfectly matched for Benny and June conversation. And for those who love Rom-Com Month, what's next on our list, you might be asking? Well, it's going to be day 16. We're going to talk about When Harry Met Sally. And that one's from 1989, just a little before this movie that we talked about. It's got Meg Ryan, Billy Crystal, Bruno Kirby, Carrie Fisher. That one's going to be such a blast to cover. It's a classic. And in a different way than this one is, it's actually like very verbal.
Yes, yes.
Like
But
opposite
just
end of
as
the
charming.
spectrum. Yeah. But I can't wait to talk about that one with you all. And in the meantime, happy rom-com month, everybody. Get love, get donuts. Bye.
Bye.